from trembling. The glass shattered before anyone could react. A plate slipped from trembling hands, crashing onto the marble floor, echoing through the upscale restaurant like a gunshot. Conversations froze mid-sentence. Forks hovered in the air. And in the center of it all stood a young waitress, her eyes wide with fear, as a sharply dressed man leaned toward her with a cruel smile that carried more power than kindness. At a nearby table, a man slowly rose from his seat. He moved with quiet control, but there was something in his eyes, something heavy, something that had seen too much. A past written in scars and silence. A single father. A veteran. A man who had fought battles far away, only to return home to a different kind of war. A man who had fought battles far away, only to return home to a different kind of war. Before we step into what happens next, take a moment, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and standing up for what's right, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel, Silent Hope. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts. The restaurant was the kind of place where everything sparkled: crystal glasses, polished floors, expensive smiles. But beneath the luxury, tension clung to the air like smoke. Daniel Hayes stood still for a second, watching. He had come here for a simple reason. His daughter, Lily, had just turned 10. She had begged him for a fancy dinner, the kind she had only seen in movies. Daniel had hesitated. Money was tight. Life after the military had not been kind. Jobs came and went. Bills stayed. But Lily's smile had been enough to make him say yes. Now she sat at the table behind him, clutching her napkin, her small face confused and worried. The waitress, no older than 22, looked like she wanted to disappear. Her uniform was neat, but her hands betrayed her fear. The man in front of her, wealthy, arrogant, used to control, had no intention of letting her walk away. Daniel didn't know what had started it. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe she had brought the wrong order. Or maybe, like too many people with power, the man simply enjoyed reminding others how small they were. But Daniel recognized that look. He had seen it before, in places where power meant survival, where the strong preyed on the weak. And something inside him refused to stay silent. He stepped forward. Each step was calm, deliberate, but carried the weight of someone who had nothing left to prove and nothing left to fear. The rich man barely noticed him at first. His focus was still locked on the waitress, his voice low but sharp, cutting through her confidence. Then Daniel spoke. Not loudly. Not aggressively. Just enough. And the entire room shifted. The man turned, irritation flashing across his face. He looked Daniel up and down. Simple clothes, worn shoes, a man who clearly didn't belong in this world of luxury. But Daniel didn't flinch. There was something about him that couldn't be measured by money. Something unbreakable. The tension grew thicker. People began to watch more closely now. Daniel didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. But his presence alone challenged the imbalance in the room. He stood beside the waitress, not in front of her like a hero, but beside her like an equal. Like someone who believed she deserved respect. The rich man laughed, a short, dismissive sound. But there was a crack in it. Because Daniel didn't back down. He had faced worse than arrogance. He had stood in places where life could end in seconds. A man with money and a sharp tongue didn't scare him. The waitress looked between them, her breath uneven, her composure fragile. And then something unexpected happened. The manager rushed over, trying to smooth things out, his smile tight with anxiety. Apologies were offered quickly, directed not at the frightened waitress, but at the wealthy man. That was when Daniel's jaw tightened. Because he had seen this before too. Blame shifted to the powerless. Silence bought with fear. And suddenly, this wasn't just about a broken plate. This was about something deeper. Lily watched from the table, her small hands gripping the edge. She didn't fully understand what was happening, but she understood her father. She knew that look in his eyes. It was the same look he had when he told her stories about courage. About doing the right thing even when it was hard. Back in the center of the room, the rich man leaned closer again, emboldened by the manager's support. But before he could continue, the waitress did something no one expected. She straightened. Just a little. Her fear didn't vanish, but something else rose beside it. And when she spoke, her voice was still soft, but steady enough to be heard. The room fell even quieter. Daniel didn't move. He simply stood there, a silent shield. The rich man's expression shifted, confusion, then irritation, then something else. Because the girl he thought he could control wasn't as powerless as he assumed. Moments passed like stretched seconds. And then, from across the room, another presence entered the scene. A man in a tailored suit, older, composed, his eyes sharp with quiet authority. He had been seated in a private section, unnoticed until now. But now, every step he took drew attention. He didn't rush. He didn't raise his voice. But when he reached the group, everything changed. The manager's face went pale. The rich man's confidence flickered. And the waitress, she froze. Not in fear this time, but in recognition. The older man looked at her, his expression unreadable at first. Then something softened, just slightly. The truth began to unfold, not with dramatic declarations, but with quiet realization. The waitress wasn't just another employee. She was someone far more important than anyone had guessed. A daughter. A hidden identity. A test, perhaps. The balance of power shifted instantly. The rich man's arrogance crumbled under the weight of who he had just tried to humiliate. But what mattered most wasn't status. It was what came next. Because the older man didn't explode in anger. He didn't demand revenge. Instead, he turned his attention to Daniel. Their eyes met. And in that moment, there was understanding. Two men from different worlds, connected by one simple truth: respect mattered more than wealth. Daniel said nothing. He didn't need recognition. He hadn't stepped in for reward. He had done it because it was right. And that was enough. The situation resolved quickly after that. The rich man retreated, his confidence gone, replaced with something quieter, perhaps shame, perhaps fear. The manager scrambled to correct his mistakes. And the waitress, she stood a little taller now. Not because of who she was, but because someone had stood beside her when she needed it most. Daniel returned to his table. Lily looked up at him, her eyes shining with pride. He smiled softly, sitting back down as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But something had changed, not just in the room, but in the people who had witnessed it. Dinner continued, but the air felt different now. Lighter. Real. As they prepared to leave, the older man approached Daniel once more. This time, there was no tension. Only respect. A quiet exchange followed, simple, sincere. No grand gestures. No dramatic offers. Just acknowledgement. And sometimes, that's more powerful than anything money can buy. As Daniel and Lily stepped out into the cool night air, the city lights flickered around them. Lily slipped her hand into his. She didn't say much. She didn't have to. Because in her eyes, he was already everything. A protector. A hero. A father who showed her what strength really looked like. And as they walked away, unnoticed by most of the world, they carried something far more valuable than wealth. They carried dignity. They carried courage. They carried hope. Before we reach the final moments of this story, here's something special. Comment below with the word respect if you believe every person deserves to be treated with dignity, no matter who they are. Because stories like this aren't just stories. They're reminders. Reminders that one moment, one choice, one act of courage can change everything. Weeks passed. Life didn't suddenly become perfect for Daniel. Bills still came. Work was still uncertain. But something had shifted. Opportunities began to appear in small, unexpected ways. A call here. A chance there. Nothing handed to him. But doors that once felt locked, now slightly open. And through it all, Lily remained his anchor. His reason. His strength. One evening, as they sat together at home, she asked him something simple. "Why did you help her?" Daniel thought for a moment. Then he answered the only way he knew how. Because it was the right thing to do. And sometimes, that's all the reason you need. If this story touched your heart, if it